Look, I just want to caution you, don't make conclusions about the trend on job numbers from 1 month's report, any more than you should have from last month's report.
After a terrible jobs report with the US economy only creating 54,000 jobs in May, we spoke to Austan Goolsbee, chairman of President Barack Obama's Council of Economic Advisors. Mr. Goolsbee told us not to panic, that the private sector should still be the engine of job growth and that there's no reason to change course on fiscal policy right now. Austan, so it was a pretty rotten jobs number today, only 54,000 on payrolls. What happened?
Well, you know, I say every month, including last month when we were 100,000, better than expected, and I'll repeat again this month when we're well below expected. You never want to make too much out of any 1 month. So multiple month averages are far more accurate descriptions of what's happening in the labor market than any 1 month's report. I think the last 6 months have been generally quite positive. We've added more than 1 million jobs in the private sector. I think what you're seeing this month is a reflection of some serious headwinds that we did face in the first half of the year, whether from gas prices, from the events of Japan, some of the events in financial markets in Europe. And that did catch up with us a bit. But the overall trend of both 6 months or for the last 15 months have clearly been going the right way. We've just got to get the growth rate up.
So you're saying this is a blip and we can expect it to bounce back in the months ahead?
What I'm saying is I don't want to make forecasts about is it a blip or not a blip. You know, we have an official forecast and we update that every 6 months, and the next will be in August. I know that the private sector forecasters have been forecasting a rebound for the second half of this year. But these have been some serious headwinds, and I mean, it's pinched the American people. I think we're feeling pretty good that the president got investment incentives through the tax code and a payroll tax cut for 150 million workers, you know, $1,000 a person for the average worker, into the tax bill to be spread out over this year. If it weren't for those, we would likely be feeling even more of a pinch than we have.
So do these latest numbers make you think that we need more such incentives? Do you think that we need a looser fiscal trajectory over the next year or two?
In this, I think the main driver of recovery at this point has got to be the private sector. The role that the government be the primary driver of recovery is the kind of reasoning that applies in the rescue phase, when you're teetering on the edge of a Great Depression, as we were when the president comes into office, and we're losing 750,000 jobs a month, and GDP's in a major negative circumstance. So there isn't a private sector to rely on. The private sector's in free fall. Then the government is really the only driver, but the primary driver. We've now shifted out of that. And so now our goal is to use government incentives and to do the various things that we can to get the private sector fully stood up and driving sustainable recovery. So I would caution getting too much into is it all about government?
Okay, so but let's talk about some of the multi-month trends, which are not just in this latest payroll report. One thing is that participation in the labour force has not bounced back the way it maybe has done in past recoveries. Why do you think that is?
You know, it's not known. Labour force participation hasn't fallen further, but hasn't bounced back very strongly. There is an underlying trend toward lower labor force participation as the population ages, and it's continued to be. We still have a long way to go in the job market. You know, we've turned it around. We've the beginnings of a turnaround, but there are still a lot of discouraged workers who dropped out of the labor force, and so you can see, you know, in an environment where the unemployment rate has fallen from 10 down to 9.1, that people would still be saying, it'd be hard to get a job, and so they're not yet searching. And if you're not searching, you don't count as being in the labor force.
So do you expect them to come back into the labour force, and when? Because that could potentially keep the unemployment rate higher as people do start
Look,
going back
you do get that dynamic that can easily happen in the short run, that as things improve, these discouraged workers who aren't searching for work so they don't count as unemployed start counting as unemployed. You can add jobs and still have the unemployment rate go up. The overall trend, however, if we do like we have done in the last 15 months, where we added more than 2 million jobs in the private sector, the unemployment rate is going to come down.
Do you think uncertainty about raising the debt ceiling is adding to the problems of the labour market?
It's hard. The Secretary of the Treasury has made clear we're a nation that pays our bills. We're going to have to say that we are willing to pay our bills. You've heard some of the rating agencies saying if they can't reach an agreement, they might even downgrade the U.S. We shouldn't get into that. The last thing the economy needs is just self-inflicted wounds. We're trying to recover from the worst downturn in all of our lifetimes. So, I don't know that this specific negotiation affected this month's job report. I think what we saw in the data this month is more reflective of the headwinds on growth that we've seen. But I think the president's idea that we should aim to achieve long-run deficit reduction and living within our means through a balanced plan remains the right approach. And ultimately, I kind of think folks are going to congeal around that idea because that's the sensible way to do it.
Are there any policies or new ideas that you're working on to try and speed the recovery of the job market?
Well, in addition to the business tax incentives and the payroll tax cuts, which are going to be distributed throughout this year and already have been important and will continue to be important, I think you see the president taking a multi-track approach, putting in place the National Export Initiative, a manufacturing policy. So I think some focus there. You've seen the president pushing this bipartisan patent bill, trying to encourage, make it easier for entrepreneurs to get patents. The Startup America initiative, again, about entrepreneurs. So balanced deficit reduction, encouraging entrepreneurship, and his regulatory look back, in which he got the 20 major agencies to go through their existing regulations to find those that are outmoded, those that are too costly, et cetera, that we could streamline, get rid of, and otherwise make the climate more favorable for business investment. I think all of those do matter.
So you're doing all these things, but what's your overall message to the American people? Are you saying we can fix this? Or are you saying this is going to take time and we just have to allow the headwinds to pass?
I think we can fix this. When the president takes office, we're losing 750,000 jobs a month, and we're teetering on the edge of a depression. Now, we've come a long way from that spot. Over the last 15 months, we've added more than 2 million jobs in the private sector. We got to do more. The president's the first person to say that. But I think clearly we can fix this, and we got to just grow our way out of this and work our way out of it. And there are going to be bumps in the road. There are always going to be different kinds of headwinds that we have to face. But the overall trajectory is what we've got to just keep pressing. We've got to get the job engine working. We've got to get people's wages up. We've got to get them into careers and with the kind of education and training that they need in both the short run to get a job and in the longer run to maintain a career and support their families and everything else.
Okay, well, Austin, thank you very much.
Thank you.